Warning, this episode may contain disturbing content, soothing narration, and mild existential dread. Basically, murder ASMR for stressed professionals. Listener discretion is advised. Hell, it might be necessary.
Labor disputes aren't supposed to end in funerals. They're supposed to end in contract negotiations, grudging agreements, and maybe some insults shouted across a picket line. They are not supposed to end in 97 caskets. But on New Year's Eve in 1986, a labor dispute at the Dupont Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico, metastasized into a felony. It started with a bad decision, one that had been foreshadowed for weeks, and it ended with 97 people dead. It wasn't just the arsonist's flame that killed them. It was what happened when that flame collided with a building full of systemic neglect. No fire protection systems, open vertical shafts, and locked or obstructed exits. This isn't a story about arson. It's about what happens when human conflict meets bad architecture, outdated codes, and corporate indifference. With the hotel locked in labor negotiations with its union, some workers decided it was time to escalate the situation, to send a warning. So while gamblers filled the casino and guests got ready for New Year's Eve festivities, a match was struck. A flame grew in silence. And by the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late for 97 people who would not make it out. This is a case also about failures in the justice system. Because while those who set the fire faced accountability in court, those who operated the hotel did not face criminal prosecution for their negligence. This is Dealing Disaster, the Dupont Plaza Hotel fire right now on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark city landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes to bring you the story of what really happened. Welcome back to Crime to Burn. I'm April, a fire protection engineer, former firefighter, and perpetually exhausted podcaster.
And I'm a really proud grandpa.
Yes, we have a new grandbaby. Perpetually exhausted or not, I am glad you're here, and I will continue to exhaust myself to bring you stories of arson and criminal fires. I just need one teensy favor from you. Go into Apple Podcasts or Spotify and give this show a 5-star rating. Written reviews on Apple Podcasts are bonus points. Episode comments on the platforms that allow them will help us survive the algorithmic gauntlet and get traction, and that is something we desperately need your help to achieve. As of the time of this recording, we have 60 reviews on Apple Podcasts and 64 on Spotify. Those of you who took the time to give us those 5 stars, we thank you sincerely. The other 4,800 or so of you who tune in each month can pause here and go do that right now. Please and thank you.
I thought you were going to say can pause here and lick our balls.
No. Growing a podcast takes the patience of a saint, and producing weekly episodes takes a level of effort that I cannot adequately relay to you. I have 2 major cases I want to bring you so badly, but I need the court records for both, and it's going to be over $2,000 by the time we get both of them. And y'all, that's a mortgage payment. We are not asking for you to fork over money. Just bless us by dropping those stars, and then go tell your friends, all of them, to listen. It'll be easier to remember to tell everyone if you put our logo directly on your shirt. So click the link in the show notes and head to our spread shop and grab yourself some merch.
I think we're starting to evolve out of the ooze, and this is becoming a luxury podcast at a few grand an episode.
Oh yeah, it's definitely luxury at this point.
You got a little bit of ice in your ears if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
It's kind of fancy.
It's a status thing. That's why you should wear merch, so people know.
It's very fancy.
Or if you cannot stand ads interrupting your podcasts, go help us afford court records by getting your episodes ad-free over on Patreon. The link is in the show notes, and there are 3 tiers of membership from reasonable to financially unhinged, so you can decide what level of chaos you want to invite into your life. And if financial support isn't in the cards, no worries. We will always be free on your favorite podcast platforms with ads, and you can still help us grow by following us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube, and leaving us comments, likes, shares, and favorites. It's free and it helps us so incredibly much. Last week we asked you for a light tickle in our comments, and Louie absolutely understood the assignment, leaving a Spotify episode comment that just said tickle tickle. Louie, we felt it.
In our Steve gland.
And thanks to Hathis for leaving us a second comment letting us know that we pronounced your name nearly perfectly. You're now our favorite person with an Icelandic name. Thanks also to Sarah Rue for leaving us a comment over on Podbean. Finally, please send us your episode feedback, case suggestions, fire stories, and most embarrassing moments to crimetoburn@gmail.com. Speaking of most embarrassing moments, once upon a time in my early 30s and on the heels of a toxic breakup, I found myself drinking rum with one of my friends at her house, and it was delicious, as I recall. And I was drunk by the time we ran out of the magic elixir for erasing inhibitions and dulling the sharp edges of a bad relationship. The problem was that we ran out of rum before we ran out of heartache to dull. So I suggested we go get more, and she explained that she had bought this bottle of rum on her last trip to Puerto Rico, and if we wanted more, we would have to get on a plane. So naturally, I hopped on the internet and pulled up one of those discount travel sites, and just as the page loaded, we both gasped. Because right in the banner was a last-minute, all-inclusive travel deal to San Juan, Puerto Rico.
What are you doing?
Wait a minute, I'll get there. And that's how I woke up in San Juan on the world's most impulsive liquor store run. We stayed in the Condado district and ended up having a lovely trip. But at the time, I had no idea that just about a mile from our hotel stood the site of one of the worst hotel fires in history. Today, that building is the San Juan Marriott Resort and Stellaris Casino, which I'm totally not sure if I'm saying that right.
That sounded good. Stellaris.
Yeah.
You sounded great.
But back in 1986, it had a different name. A name that would be forever burned into fire protection history and hotel tragedy. It was the Dupont Plaza Hotel and Casino. And if you were in San Juan in the final week of 1986 and you flipped on the radio, you might have raised an eyebrow at some of the ads playing between salsa tracks and holiday promos. The union representing the majority of the workers at the Dupont Plaza were knee-deep in a hostile labor dispute with management. No deal, and the workers would walk out of the casino on one of the most profitable nights of the year. So the union did something unusual. They bought radio ads urging the public to avoid the DuPont on New Year's Eve, warning of service interruptions. It was part pressure tactic, part public warning. But it wasn't the most troubling message circulating that week. Not even close. But the Benevento family either missed those warnings or shrugged them off. They'd flown in from New England with their 2 kids and 28 additional human beings. Now, I know some of you are social butterflies, but traveling with 32 people is not a vacation. It's a logistical crisis in matching t-shirts.
Well, maybe your crew isn't as deep as mine.
In fact, I don't think I even know 32 people that I could organize to join me to a jaunt at a local bar, much less to Puerto Rico.
This person took 30-something people to Puerto Rico.
No, they didn't pay for all 32 people. It was like a group of 32 people that got together and said, hey, let's all go to Puerto Rico. And they went to Puerto Rico together.
That sounds like a timeshare.
No, it said it was a casino junket.
Which also sounds suspiciously like a timeshare.
I don't know. Never been on a casino junket. I don't want to hang out with 32 people. That's too much logistics.
Which is why we don't go on cruises.
That's why we don't leave the house. Unfortunately for the Beneventos, those ads, whether ignored or unheard, were wildly underselling the risk. You see, that labor dispute wasn't just bluster for the picket line. The hotel planned to lay off more than 60 union workers. Wages and health benefits were being fought over, and the vibes were not great. And while most union members were probably just trying to keep their jobs and go home, it only takes 1 or 3 to take a tense situation and escalate it into a mass casualty incident that would leave a mark on San Juan for decades. It turns out some of the union members were so adamant about proving their point that they'd already struck a match, thrice. During the week leading up to that ill-fated New Year's Eve, 3 small fires were found smoldering in closets, discovered and extinguished by staff before anyone noticed. Barely a blip during one of the busiest weeks of the year. But ominous foreshadowing is always easier to spot in hindsight. But for hotel management, the foreshadowing was more apparent, because they had received menacing letters and even bomb threats. For 4 months, the Teamsters had been locked in negotiations trying to claw back wages and benefits for their members. And the night before the fire, those talks collapsed. There was no deal, no agreement. just simmering anger. So while John Benevento was trying his luck in the casino, the union was in a downstairs ballroom voting on whether to walk out at midnight. The result? The strike was on. A strike is a bold move, but for some people in that room, a walkout didn't feel like enough of a statement. Meanwhile, because gambling and parenting don't mix, Joan Benevento took the kids to the beach. Around 3 p.m., the kids wanted to head back into the hotel to their room to watch cartoons, and she let them go by themselves. The 80s were absolutely feral about child supervision. And while the kids were pushing elevator buttons, 3 men downstairs were planning a felony, and not the fun casino kind, the mass casualty kind. The Dupont Plaza was built in 1963 as a luxury beachfront hotel in Condado. It was 20 stories with 423 rooms, ballrooms downstairs, casinos, a disco, basically the perfect recipe for a fire protection engineer's acid reflux. Because it was built in 1963, sprinklers were not required throughout. Some sources say the lobby and casino were not sprinklered, but others say the whole building wasn't. Either way, the fire hit the ballroom and lobby, and those areas had 0 automatic suppression. As for fire alarms, sources argue about whether there was no alarm at all or just a manual system that needed human intervention to trigger an alert. Whichever version is true, nobody did anything because no alarm ever sounded. Immediately following that emergency Teamsters meeting downstairs, 3 union members were conspiring to send management a message, loud and clear. They didn't need gasoline or Molotov cocktails. What they needed was already in the hotel. They grabbed a can of Sterno, allegedly stolen from the kitchen supplies. And if you've never worked in catering, you might not recognize the name, but you've probably seen it. Think of the little metal cans under buffet trays that keep your mashed potatoes infinitely warm and vaguely suspicious. Inside those cans is a fuel, usually methanol or ethanol, that's been gelled for safety. The gel keeps it from splashing around, making it safer than a liquid fuel, but it also means that it burns cleanly, steadily, and for a very long time, which unfortunately made it ideal for what these men had in mind.
You can cause a lot of chaos with a Sterno can.
Now, Sterno isn't explosive. It doesn't flash like gasoline, it just burns, quietly, keeping your metal banquet trays of food warm, until it isn't a metal tray that it's heating. That kind of slow, steady ignition source offers certain benefits. Like, it can buy you time.
Wait, what's it heating instead of the thing?
I'm going to tell you.
Oh.
Time to leave the room before the fire grows too large, too smoky, too noticeable. But before they lit the fire, they needed a distraction. It's been widely alleged that 2 of the conspirators staged a heated argument, maybe even an all-out brawl, to draw attention away from the third man. While tempers flared in the ballroom corridor, the third man slipped into a ballroom storage area with a can of Sterno. Inside were stacks of stored ballroom furniture, likely padded banquet chairs. Many were still boxed or flat-packed, which meant cardboard, foam, wood, and fabric were all sitting there just waiting for a spark. He placed the Sterno and lit it where it would ignite the furniture. And then, according to several reports, he actually barricaded some of the doors to the room before leaving. That would slow down discovery and prevent anyone from quickly being able to access and extinguish the fire if it was discovered. After he lit the fuel, he left, and the 3 men went on about their day. Now, to picture what happens next, you need a quick mental map of the building. So the ballroom level had 2 main ballrooms, north and south. The south ballroom occupied the lower level only, but the north ballroom was double height, meaning the floor of the ballroom was on the lower level, but its ceiling rose all the way up to the lobby level above. And connecting the lower ballroom level to the lobby above was a large open stairway, essentially a vertical highway for heat and smoke. The ignition point was in the south ballroom, where the stored chairs provided a very heavy fuel load. With the doors closed, the fire would have quickly become ventilation limited. It would flame up initially, then stabilize into a hot, underventilated burn. Superheated gases, dense black smoke, and lots of unburned fuel in that smoke would be gathering overhead. For a while, that smoke just built up behind closed doors. But when the flames finally burned through the combustible partition separating the south ballroom from the double-height north ballroom, the entire fire dynamics changed. Suddenly there was oxygen, a lot of it. And that new oxygen didn't just make the flames bigger, it caused that cloud of superheated, fuel-rich smoke to ignite almost all at once. A kind of flashover. And because the north ballroom was double height and open to the lobby via the stair, that ignition sent flame and toxic smoke racing upward toward the main lobby and the casino. It was no longer a smoldering, contained furniture fire. It had just become a building fire. Witnesses later described an explosion. They didn't have the language for fire dynamics. They only knew that one moment the lobby was normal, and the next it was blasted with heat, smoke, and flame. What they were actually experiencing wasn't a bomb, it was flashover. Flashover is what happens when all of that superheated smoke, gases, and fuel particles suspended in the air suddenly reach ignition temperature all at the same time. That smoke layer isn't just smoke, it's also fuel. So when oxygen suddenly becomes available, the entire layer ignites in a violent, rolling fire event. That's why, instead of just smoke infiltrating the lobby, it was a literal cloud of fire racing up the open stair and across the ceiling. And in almost every mass casualty fire we've discussed where flashover occurred, survivors swore there were bombs or explosives involved. That's how violent a flashover is. It's an important transition stage in fire development, and it is deadly. The lobby now had a rolling ball of superheated, flaming smoke moving through it with no structural interruptions. And there were no alarms, no strobes, no horns, nothing to tell people that they needed to leave right now. People in the lobby instinctively headed for the exits. But within seconds of those first flames appearing, that flashover cloud ignited the ceiling itself, radiating heat to other fuel packages. Later, fire investigators modeled the fire and determined that from ignition to full lobby untenability took roughly 13 minutes. And most of that time, the fire was still growing downstairs in the ballroom. In other words, once the fire breached the stairwell and entered the lobby, the people in the lobby had seconds, maybe minutes, before it was completely impassable. And that was terrible news for the people in the casino, including John Benevento. Without alarms or staff notification, their first indication that anything was wrong would likely have been too late to get them through the lobby to the main entrance. And critically, the casino didn't have a proper exit that dumped directly outside. All of the casino exits dumped into the lobby. And this is where some of the reports get messy and contradictory. Many contemporary news accounts insist that there was another exit from the casino, but that it was locked to prevent theft. But when you go through the later technical fire reports that modeled the floor plans, you don't see any legitimate alternate means of egress. It appears that there may have been one other door, but it wasn't actually an exit, not in the life safety sense, meaning it was never sized for the occupant load. It wasn't protected as a rated corridor, and it didn't discharge to the outside, and it didn't meet code as an exit. Instead, it was just a back-of-house service corridor that the staff used, a corridor that was routinely filled with stored equipment and supplies, making it a choke point rather than a passageway. Reports also suggested that to prevent theft, the door into the service area was kept locked, because management valued casino chips more than egress pathways. So when survivors said the exit was locked, they weren't wrong, but what they were pointing to wasn't actually an exit. It was just a locked shortcut to a cluttered service corridor that management treated like a vault door. The exit doors from the casino also swung inward into the casino and not out toward the lobby, and that is an egress problem, and in some fires it has been deadly. But in this case, it likely didn't significantly contribute to the high loss of life, because at the moment the lobby became involved and rapidly untenable, those casino doors were already propped open. It wasn't until later, when the lobby was fully engulfed in flame and smoke, that casino dealers closed the doors in a desperate attempt to buy the people inside a few more moments of survivable air. It was a small act of attempted heroism, but a futile one. Those who hadn't evacuated immediately when the lobby first ignited were effectively trapped. And many of the people who did manage to push through those doors into the lobby and escape did so while on fire, literally. Survivors described running out into the driveway and onto the pool deck with their hair and clothing burning. And that's because by the time they crossed the lobby, the radiant heat was high enough to ignite clothing, and the temperatures were hot enough to permanently damage lungs in a single breath. John Benevento was trapped in the casino. His 2 children were upstairs in the hotel tower watching cartoons, and his wife Joan was down on the beach when she noticed smoke. She turned back toward the building and saw smoke pouring from the lower levels, wrapping around the hotel like a shroud, and she had no idea where her husband or children were. Inside, the casino was devolving into panic. John was trying to find a way out. Because smoking was permitted in the casino, it was fitted with smoke eater fans. Essentially, they were exhaust fans that pulled cigarette smoke out of the room to keep it from drifting into the lobby. And that system created negative pressure in the casino, so that air flowed from the lobby into the casino. During this fire, that system worked against them. The smoke eaters were pulling the toxic fire gases from the lobby into the casino like a vacuum. The back wall of the casino was plate glass windows, most of them blocked by slot machines. But John grabbed a chair and smashed one of those windows. His options were to stay inside a room filling with toxic smoke, with all formal exits leading into an impassable lobby, or to jump the 2 stories 15 to 20 feet down to the concrete below. John jumped. Others did too. Their injuries were severe. John happened to hit a wall-mounted speaker on his way down, which slowed his fall just enough that he survived the landing, but both of his ankles broke on impact. Now, smoke will exploit any vertical opening it can find because hot gases rise. This is why shafts in high-rise buildings like stairs, plumbing chases, and mechanical shafts have to be fire-rated and protected to prevent smoke migration. Today, high-rise stairs are required to be smoke-proof, meaning that they're pressurized with clean air during a fire so that when you open the stair doors to evacuate, the smoke can't flood into the shaft and choke off the only way out. In 1986, the Dupont Plaza had no such systems. Early in the fire, the stairwells filled with toxic smoke. People trying to descend found their eyes burning and their lungs seizing. As the Benevento children tried to come down the stairs, evacuees coming up the stairs turned them back, shouting that the stair was impassable now. The National Fire Protection Association's investigations floor plans are frustratingly unclear about the stair discharge. It appears that there was at least one exit stair that discharged directly outdoors, while the other likely discharged into the lobby, but I can't be 100% sure. But with the lobby involved and the lower floors compromised, even those who made it into the good stair may have been driven back by the smoke conditions infiltrating that stair. What we do know is that dozens of people turned around, and many of them ended up on the top floor congregating along an exterior balcony that ran just below the roof all the way around the exterior of the building. John and Joan's children did not make it back to the roof. Another guest took them with him to his 14th floor room, where they barricaded the door and tried to seal up all the gaps with wet towels, and then they waited. Fire crews arrived and began attacking the blaze as ambulances lined up to carry away the injured. Bystanders commandeered pool deck lounge chairs as makeshift stretchers to carry the burned and injured survivors to waiting EMS units. Joan was frantically searching the crowd for her children, and eventually she found John. She told him that the children had been inside the building when the hotel caught fire, so John refused to be transported to the hospital. With 2 broken ankles, he and Joan spent hours searching through crowds of evacuees and survivors trying to find their son and daughter. As firefighters attacked the main body of the fire, it became clear that dozens of evacuees were trapped on a narrow balcony just below the roof deck. They had escaped those smoke-filled stairways, but there was no way down and no interior path forward, and they were stuck. So helicopters arrived, but this wasn't the tidy, well-orchestrated rooftop rescue you see in the movies, because the roof of the Dupont Plaza had no safe landing zone, and the heat and smoke exiting the building created violent air currents. Superheated gases and rising smoke plumes didn't just block visibility, they disrupted rotors, starved engines of stable airflow, and created enough turbulence to shove helicopters around in the sky. Pilots later reported their aircraft shuddering as they tried to get close, the kind of mechanical protests that makes every pilot sit up straight. And then there was another problem. The evacuees weren't actually on the roof, they were on a balcony below it. So men on the roof formed a human chain, hoisting each evacuee from the balcony up onto the roof one by one. Only then could the helicopters lift them off. 8 helicopters worked this scene for more than 5 hours, plucking small groups of people off the roof and ferrying them down to the beach below. With that many aircraft operating in such a tight pocket of air, pilots had to be hyper-aware of one another to avoid mid-air collisions, all while fighting turbulence, smoke, and shifting thermal currents.
Man, honestly, that sounds incredible. Like, after 5 hours, I figured that whole scene would just be cooked.
The video is fascinating of the pilots, how they worked together. There were so many helicopters so close together, it is terrifying to watch.
Those aircrew guys are amazing, man. Like,
they are.
Air medics and helicopter pilots, those guys are freaking awesome.
It was one of the most complex and dangerous rescue operations in hotel fire history. Now, Joan and John prayed with every helicopter that touched down on the beach that their children would be among the next to emerge. But as night fell, hours after the fire began around 3 p.m., Brandon and Chandra were still missing, and their parents began to fear the worst. Meanwhile, inside a smoke-filled room on the 14th floor, Brandon and Chandra were riding out the disaster with another guest who'd taken them in. They waited until firefighters finally knocked down the blaze, and only then were they finally led to a lower level where they were evacuated by ladder into the waiting arms of their mother 5 hours after the fire had begun. It was a blissful reunion at the end of 5 hours of absolute terror. When the smoke cleared, 97 people were dead. Some reports say 98. And more than 140 were injured. Survivors were relocated to a hotel across the street, and they were forced to live in the clothes they escaped in for the next 3 days, smelling of smoke, many with dried blood on them from helping the injured, before officials could manage to retrieve their belongings. One of the dead was a U.S. Secret Service agent. He wasn't there for the party. He had been investigating counterfeit money being passed in the casino. For the Beneventos, the shock was compounded by grief. Of the 32 people in their travel group, 9 would not return home. With threatening letters already received by hotel management and the ongoing labor dispute, investigators began considering arson almost immediately and offered a reward for information. News reports quickly connected the fire to the union conflict. Now, the union's attorney at the time was a man named Jorge Farinacci, a man who happened to be out on $1 million bond for his alleged role in a $7 million Wells Fargo heist from 1983. Rumors swirled that he was affiliated with the Puerto Rican independence group Los Macheteros. Despite the intrigue and the headlines, investigators ultimately found no evidence that organized crime had directed or participated in the fire. But 3 men were ultimately arrested: Hector Escudero Aponte, Armando Jimenez Rivera, and Jose Francisco Rivera Lopez. They were all charged in federal court with 96 counts of murder, a number that doesn't match the official death toll. Now, the best explanation, according to contemporary reporting that I can find, is that prosecutors had planned to charge the death of the Secret Service agent separately under a federal murder statute, and it's unclear whether that ever materialized. In any case, all 3 men pled guilty to federal charges connected to the fire. Aponte and Rivera Lopez were sentenced to 99 years in federal prison, while Jimenez Rivera, viewed as having a lesser role, received a 75-year sentence. Now, the sentencing is fascinating because prosecutors actually recommended far lower sentences, 24 to 25 years for each man under the plea deals for their cooperation. But the judge was reportedly horrified by the nature and scale of the fire and rejected those recommendations and imposed significantly harsher terms. Now, all 3 appealed their sentences over the following years, arguing everything from ineffective counsel to sentencing disparity. And eventually, their sentences were reduced, and all 3 men were released from custody in the early 2000s. Criminal prosecutions addressed who lit the fire, but civil litigation addressed who helped the 97 people die. More than 2,300 plaintiffs filed lawsuits, survivors, burn victims, and families who lost loved ones. The defendants' list included the hotel's ownership and management, multiple contractors, suppliers, and a long roster of insurers. It became one of the most sprawling civil cases of its era, with over 400 lawyers involved across multiple jurisdictions. The suits weren't arguing about who struck the match. That part was settled. They were arguing about the building. Specifically, whether the Dupont Plaza's designs, systems, and management created conditions that turned an arson into a mass casualty event. After more than 3 years of litigation, mediation, and federal case management, a global settlement was reached, $220 million, one of the largest fire-related civil settlements in U.S. history. None of that money came from the arsonists because they had no assets. The settlement was paid by insurers and corporate defendants found civilly responsible for the building conditions that amplified the tragedy. Now, the civil case dragged on for years, and at one point, there were more than 400 defense attorneys representing dozens of different companies. Rather than fight alone and get picked off one by one, many of the corporate defendants formed what's called a joint defense, essentially a legal alliance. They pooled experts, shared discovery, and coordinated strategies so the plaintiffs wouldn't bulldoze them individually. Today, that kind of collaboration is standard in mass tort litigation, but Dupont Plaza is one of the cases that helped define how to use it at scale. So this case didn't just change fire protection standard, it changed legal strategy. It proved that coordinated defense was viable in large multi-defendant mass tort cases, and it showed corporate defendants that they could pool resources and unify experts and fight complex civil litigation as a single strategic bloc. The Dupont Plaza fire didn't just traumatize a city and spark one of the most complex civil litigation battles in history. It also became a turning point for the fire protection world. Codes don't usually change because someone had a good idea in a boardroom. They change because something went horribly wrong in the real world. And in 1986, 97 deaths made a ruthlessly persuasive argument. And here's what shifted in the aftermath. Automatic sprinklers went from luxury to mandatory. Hotels built in the early 1960s hadn't been required to be sprinklered. But by the late 1980s, that posture became absolutely indefensible. NFPA and the hotel industry responded fast. We started to see retroactive sprinkler mandates spread across major U.S. cities. National model codes began requiring sprinklers in high-rise buildings, hotels, assembly occupancies, casinos, and in new hotel construction. In other words, the era of unsprinklered high-rise hotels was ending. Fire alarm and notification requirements got teeth. Whether the Dupont Plaza had no alarm or only a manual alarm became irrelevant. The lesson was that occupants needed automatic detection and building-wide notification. Smoke detection in strategic spaces, supervised fire alarm systems, occupant notification appliances, and emergency voice communication in high-rises. We got a front row seat to see how villainous vertical openings really were. The fire moved from the ballroom to the lobby via open interior stairs and unprotected vertical openings, which acted like a flue. Post-fire, we began to see increased emphasis on enclosure of stairways and smoke-proof enclosures in high-rises, draft stopping and rated barriers between floors, and pressurization systems for high-rise stairs. Put simply, we stopped building chimneys into hotels. It refocused attention on the importance of egress, including door swing and non-exit discharge paths. In truth, the Dupont Plaza was a system of failures. A labor dispute became an ignition source, but outdated codes, unenforced standards, unprotected vertical openings, and unsprinklered fuel loads created the conditions for mass mortality. Only the arsonists were criminally sentenced. The systemic negligence that allowed 97 deaths was resolved not in criminal court but in civil settlements. So legally speaking, accountability was only partially served. This has been Dealing Disaster, the Dupont Plaza Hotel Fire, on Crime to Burn. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I figured compared to that, it would be...
You take such good care of me. Such good care.
I'm going to help you live forever. I'd get ready for incoming fur missile.
Come on, fur missile. Before we can record, we have to sedate all the animals.
My sedation's going to wear off.
Before we can record, we have to sedate the co-host.
Can we just give it a decongestant or run a pipe cleaner up its snout or something? I don't know.
I'm not volunteering for pipe cleaner duty. Can you breathe quieter? You're being the best one out of all three of you. But you're breathing too loud.
Yeah, you're interfering the most right now.
Yeah, breathe through your mouth. Because I remember I was sitting at the table and I was petting her and I was like, what is on your back? And it was like, syrup. Like, it was just the most natural thing for a cat to have syrup on its back. She was like, she was sitting in my lap while I was eating waffles. Like, great.
Maybe we just need to shave the whole cat. It's so shameful when you take the patches out of the cat. You should just shave the whole thing, like shave a mohawk into it or something.
I'm not giving the cat a mohawk. If you want a mohawk on a cat, it's going to have to be this cat.
Where did you get that from?
The Beast with Two Backs? I don't remember.
That came out of nowhere.
Metastasized into a felony. Well, we got, 4 sentences in?
Here comes the galloping parade of insanity. Honestly, though, this is still less chaotic than some artists I've worked with.
I drank a lot of rum while I was there.
Well, you can't drink the water.
I did it that time.
Man, here, make skin contact with me.
Oh, yeah.
This warning sounds an awful lot like propaganda. You're starting to glitch out, man.
My throat's coated in enchilada.
Yummy.
There was no alarm at all, or just a manual system.
Manual exhaust system, like, I felt like that was automatic, though. Thanks for not shattering all my dreams.
When we get to the end where we're chatting, remind me to tell you about the fingers. Just remind me, just say fingers and I'll remember.
Just say, like a safe word, finger.
Fingers.
This is why we can never do video.
And lots of unburned fuel gathering overhead.
That was Swedish. Unburned.
One day I'm going to be less phlegmy. Join us on Patreon so I can avoid so I can avoid some decongestants.
The 1930s called.
They want their podcaster back. They don't even know what podcasts are.
Is it time to ask you about fingers?
Not yet. I was going to tell you at the end.
Sorry, I'm always too eager with my fingers.
I think you're just eager enough. Pause for animal relocation.
This episode is brought to you by Animal Relocation, and I suggest the wild. This episode is brought to you by Poor Animal Impulse Control. Did you just say sniff the kitten?
I did.
As a public service announcement, I would like to suggest that our audience make it their endeavor this evening to sniff the kitten. The bubbling bog kitten. Just sniff that kitten. Sniff that fluffy little ball of sunshine. Get your nose right up in there. This episode's brought to you by Sniffle Kitten. I don't know what to say about a sniffle kitten.
I have deposited one of the agents of chaos in the other agent of chaos's room.
You take a shit and the kids are...
Oh, I said I deposited an agent of chaos. My it's not chaotic.
Oh no. Even your follows all the rules.
Yeah, it does. Especially since I increased my fiber intake.
Oh my god. This metaphor's gone off the rails.
They're more like a well-trained marching band.
Because there's a tuba? What do you mean?
I don't have a nefarious leader in here. Only when you're in me do I have a nefarious leader.
Wait, I thought I was benevolent. You were thinking of a gregarious leader.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Lead us, gregarious leader.
Stored chairs provided a heavy fuel load.
Hey, man. You said balls and load a lot in this episode. Did you realize that you'd written those words that many times in succession?
Nope.
It's a lot there. A lot of balls. A lot of load. You know, I never really noticed before, but this is kind of like ear porn for...
Pyromaniacs?
Yeah. Ooh. Put words in my mouth. I'll be putting things in your mouth.
Okay. That sounds more like he's licking his junk.
Be like a bat. You can echolocate what the dog is licking. I can't work under these conditions.
And there were no alarms, no strobes, no dogs interrupting recording.
Fingers yet?
Not yet.
Now you said balls and choke points, and what was the thing right before that? And then
back of house.
Yeah. Man, this is a heavy sexual metaphor in here. Tell me about the fingers, man.
I found a YouTube video when I was doing the research where they were interviewing a FBI agent, asking how they were going to go about identifying all of these bodies. And they were in the lab. So the FBI agent said that they had collected all of the names of people that were missing or unaccounted for, or that people weren't sure if they were in the hotel or not. And then they had called up to the FBI headquarters, and every fingerprint card, because they didn't have a computerized system at this point, every fingerprint card of somebody with that name got sent down to Puerto Rico. And so they showed in this video, people had fingers removed from cadavers that they were fingerprinting, and it's in this news video of people taking fingers and like degloving the finger skin and putting it on their finger with a glove on under it and printing them so they could compare them to the fingerprint card. I was horrified watching it. It was like a news report watching it. I just couldn't believe that there was a video of this.
Lasers are cool. You shouldn't look over your shoulder every time you leave the house.
I don't leave the house. Are you scared of a 3-pound kitten? And she goes after your feet? She got prickle feet? We're good to go.
I don't know how good we are to go, but we should go. Toodles.
Crime to Burn is a production of Crime to Burn, LLC, where we light fires in your brain and not your buildings. All rights reserved. Still spiritually parched after this episode? It's okay, Steve believes in cross-pollination. Here's a trailer for a show we think deserves to infiltrate your ear holes, in a good way. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review before you go. Steve is watching.
Hey BC3 crew, and listen, I know you're like, BC3 crew, but listen, yes, if you're here, that means you're a part of the BC3 crew. I'm already claiming you. My name is Jasmine C.L. Prince, and I'm here to introduce you to my new true crime podcast, Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet. Now, I know what you're thinking, another true crime podcast, and I get it. Trust me, I do. But let me tell you why you need to be a part of the crew. For real. We're talking true crime, right? But with a twist. We're covering exclusive cases by Black men and women. And we're talking fraud, scams, and even murder, okay? Murder. And that's your typical gang and drug murders. No. We covering frauds, scams, influencer people just taking people's money for no reason. Y'all remember the PPP stuff? Yeah, we're covering that. That's crazy. So make sure you join me every Tuesday for Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet. Subscribe now and let's sip, stitch, and spill some true crime tea.